I was asked whether I should have been introduced. I think I do not need introductions, or I can introduce myself. I'm Olena Zelenska, the wife of Volodymyr Zelensky, and I want to thank at once for the third year in a row that I'm being invited to take part in this conference. And every time for me, this is both an exciting and important event. For the first 2 years, I've been talking to active youth, and this was inspiring because we were talking about development, about our future, and I'm often thinking about them these days. Where are they? Maybe some of them are here, some of them are volunteering, some of them are at the front line, and some of them are abroad. What they are living through now, all these talented girls and boys who were thinking to thinkers here and who were inspired by the examples of the outstanding people of the world. Their lives have changed on the 24th of February because life has changed for everyone in Ukraine. And some points of stability and points of stability are very important. And one of such points of stability in our life are the Yalta European strategy sessions, because whatever happens, the Yalta European strategy goes on. I'm very grateful to foreign participants that you have come today here. You came to the capital of a country at war, which very recently was under threat. And to listen to those air sirens in daytime or nighttime together with us, this is a mission of friends who are with us. Thank you very much. I'm being asked rather often in the interviews what were the scariest events of the half year that has passed. This is a journalist's manner. They always want to produce some rankings to know the most and the most. And I tell them that the scariest thing happens every time, and it is not ethical to compare. For instance, the damaged Kharkiv, where a father holds the hand of his killed underage son and can't leave this hand for hours and hours on end. Or maybe another father who lost his child in Chaplin. What is scariest to read? The testimony of a Mariupol resident who has almost died in Mariupol, or another diary of a woman who lives in Kharkiv. I am sure that there are no grades of scary. Our main mistake, the mistake of the entire world, is that we thought that the 20th century, with the experiments that were hating the very human nature, has passed away. But it turned out that the darkness has been deeper than we thought. After Bucha, you cannot just go on living, just as after the Auschwitz. I'm sure that today, what we witness today, is the war between world perceptions, between the sets of values. Whether you are on the side of the forces of aggression or on the side of those who protect and defend the light. Our major strength is in defending our people, our children. We're saving the country not only on the front line, we're also saving the country when we take the kids with oncology abroad, when we bring incubators for newborn babies to the cities which were born for premature babies. And by the way, almost half of all the newborn babies are born premature now because of the shocks that their mothers live through. Some of them weigh only something like 700 grams, but we will do everything possible so that they survive, so that the country survives, and we all survive. Because those kids are our value as well. Recently, I got a new video from a girl, Sasha, who's now in the US. She has got a new hand. She had to get it because she doesn't have a hand of her own, because she lost her hand when they were leaving Hostomel and they were passing through Bucha. They were fired at, and she lost her hand. Now she's got a new prosthetics in the USA, and at last she's able to do something with both her hands. And I know for sure that this girl will live in a new way, same as the entire country. And I know that if our children learn and develop, then the entire country does this. And our adult people, if they have an opportunity to work and get some income, then their families will live. And of course, the country is not only infrastructure or economy, this is people first and foremost. And we want to rehabilitate them. We are creating a new system of immediate psychological help. There's no such system anywhere in the world, and I hope that elsewhere in the world you won't need to replicate this system. You know, it is a very difficult thing to accompany your children not to a school but to a cellar, to a bunker. It is very difficult to explain to your kids why someone wants to kill them. But I am sure that our values will win. It's humanity against aggression. The world still has the opportunity to define its position. Thank you. Now we have some time for the conversation. I'm Timothy Snyder, an American historian, and I have this special challenge to ask questions after this splendid speech. In your speech, you said you talked about some polar things, just opposed things like humanity and aggression. I'm very thankful to you for this. But what about pragmatism? We know that history is being moved often by pragmatism. Thank you very much for your question. Recently, I was asked in one of the interviews that in Western Europe, quite a lot of people face economic crisis, and they feel it themselves. The prices are rising, they are disturbed about their future, how they will pay for energy, and I'm sure that this is true. This is what's happening, but this is an economic crisis provoked by the war and nothing else. Yes, we have a hot front line now, and what's happening abroad, we may say that this is an economic and information front line. Will it be far-sighted and pragmatic to surrender at those front lines? If we do this, then the war will never end. Aggressor will change, but there will be aggressor. And to always yield and to always surrender is not far-sighted enough and is not pragmatic. Even 3 years ago, you were not a very significant person. You were a scriptwriter in a entertainment show. Yes, you were married, but at the moment you are the unique first lady of a country at war. You are the first wife of a president who spoke to the US Congress. How do you feel in relation to this transformation? Thank you for your question. Honestly, I do not believe in magic transformations. I know and I believe that every person has a range of opportunities and skills that we just don't put to use when we do not need to do this. And if there were no necessity in using some of the opportunities that I have now, but previously I did not need them. At the moment, however, there's a feeling of responsibility and understanding that I have to do this. I do not believe that I have become another person, another sort of person. I'm just living the circumstances that are there at the moment, and I try to do whatever depends on me. You mentioned my speech at the Congress. Of course, I had not dreamt of speaking to the Congress when I was a girl, for instance, a little girl. You know, I would not advise anyone to do this because it's not a very inspiring thing to speak about the war in your country when some people came to you with weapons in their hands. But I had to do it, and I hope that I was listened to and heard. Moreover, I do not hope, I know that this was the case. And this gives me assuredness that I do some things right. Yes, when you were in the USA, you were very specifically talking about some things. You also talked about filtration and deportation, and it was very important for us Americans. Yes, maybe you have not changed, but the focus of attention has changed. Same as the focus of your activity has changed since the 24th of February. Yes, everything has changed, same as the life of Ukraine and Ukrainians has changed. And if my work has not always been humanitarian, after the full-scale invasion started, most of the projects turned out to be rescue missions. I told you already about my helping kids with oncology. We took abroad more than 500 oncology patients who are kids through Poland to Western Europe, to the USA, to Canada. This was a huge rescue mission, and we are proud that we did this. I told you about the incubators for newly born babies as well. It was very sad during the first months of the war to understand that quite a lot of what you were doing for several years before has either stopped or became obsolete or not very needed. For instance, the reform of school nutrition. We were applying so much effort to this. And then I understood that during the first weeks and months of the war, it would be naive to go on doing this because you had just to feed people. However, we were able to come back to this topic, and recently we've reached cooperation with an American mecenate, philanthropist, and we will set up a kitchen in Bucha, which will feed people not only in Bucha, but also in the entire territorial community, 10,000 portions a day, not only for school kids, but for the other people as well. And then there's an information front line, of course. And I hope that my voice, if it can be heard, should always sound together with other voices telling what's happening in Ukraine. And I try to use every opportunity and every ground to relay the truth. It's easy because you don't have to manipulate, you don't have to maneuver. You should just tell what's happening, and it's always frank and sincere. Of course, I can go into details, but can I ask you a question? I just cannot but use the opportunity, because for me it is quite an honor to talk to you personally, honest. And there are some issues that disturb me. When I was reading your book about tyranny, and this was 2 years ago, I tell you honestly, I had not regarded it as a practical warning. I was reading it in a historical context, just as I suppose most of the readers. But now, when we see what's happening, what would you add to this book? And another question, which major lessons we still hadn't learned? Oh, thank you very much for this good question, and I'm very glad that you remembered this book, because this book about tyranny I wrote in 2016, under the impression of Maidan specifically, and in this book there's quite a lot of Ukrainian examples. I was learning from Ukrainians, and I'm very glad that the circle has been completed with your question. And answering your question, I think that as you said in your speech, we should think that freedom and democracy are ethical categories, the category of choice. And we also have to know that it is very important that we should think about normality, not as of what is there now, but what should be there, so that we become and be normal people in a non-conformist aspect, so that we have the sense and feeling of values. And I also think that it is important that we understand and realize that with freedom, with liberty, some risks are always linked to freedom and democracy. Sometimes those risks are higher, sometimes they are lower, but they are always there. Thank you very much. Thank you. I wanted to ask you about a specific thing. This is a rather unpleasant question, regrettably, but this is one of the important problems of the country because Ukraine is a country on whose territory the war rages. The issue of democracy is a practical issue. More than 6 million people have left the country. Most of them are women and children. Does Ukraine have a plan to bring those people, especially kids, back? And do you have the plan to stimulate people? Yes, we understand that 8 million Ukrainians are now abroad, and most of them are women and children. And there are two moments here. What shall we do for them to come back? And what shall we do so that they retain the link between themselves and Ukraine, so that they understand that we remember them and that they want to come back themselves? Of course, there's a material aspect to this. People have to feel safe in this or that shape, so that people have where to come back to. We have to restore their dwellings and to reach the state of things so that people know that they should come back to where they know how their children will be brought up. Medical sphere, education. So this is the issue of the restoration of the infrastructure, etc. Now the huge issue is the return of young people and students. For instance, many Ukrainians have joined universities in Europe where there were very attractive conditions of joining the university, and of course we understand that there are very attractive conditions of learning and of living there, better than Ukraine. So we have to make Ukrainian conditions more attractive than European ones. So we have to make better our hostels, dormitories, and to improve conditions of life for students. Otherwise, in this we need financial and political help from other countries. Of course, the Ukrainian economy can do it itself, but this will take an immense amount of time, and the link should not be broken between us here and Ukrainians abroad. I'm now talking to my colleagues in many countries about the improvement of the level of education of our kids. Yes, most of the kids go there to local schools, but we have to provide for the situation when they do not lose the link to the Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture, and we have to provide them with this opportunity. There's a lot of Ukrainian teachers who found themselves abroad. We have to provide them with an employment opportunity. I talked to the First Lady of Greece yesterday, and according to Greek law, any child that is in Greece should go to school, and they are actually forbidden from missing the lessons. But if we want the Ukrainian children to continue their learning in Ukrainian schools online, and still they go to local schools, we have to ask the local authorities so that they provide for more flexible conditions of our children's education in those countries, because there's quite a lot of incoming circumstances. For instance, in Baltic countries, you have bilingual schools like Lithuanian and Ukrainian, and then you can provide some Ukrainian language education here, but in other countries this is more complex. And of course, the major thing that we should do is introduce changes here, so that they know this and want to come back. And of course, you need some economic support for those children, and probably every Ukrainian on their own level are specialists in this sphere. But what does your experience says? How can you convert your fear into the understanding of results?
Розпочну з того, що дійсно в Україні зараз розробляється національна програма.
I think I'll start by saying that now Ukraine is developing a special program for mental health and social support. We have very little time to draft it. We really don't have any time to try anything, to have drafted and final version. There should be a training program or curriculum, a program which would give an opportunity to an individual to receive quick psychological support. That would be, of course, the work with the militaries, especially post-traumatic syndrome. What I heard that if an individual right after the stressful event or in course of the stressful event, if such individual meets somebody who can calm this individual down or give him or her the psychological support, then the most likely this victim will not feel any further traumatic consequences of this event. So we need to train everybody who are the rescuers, who are first responders, including medical doctors and teachers. We all need to train them in skills of social assistance. The assistance, because many of them often burn out because the overcomplicated conditions of their work. We need more specialists in this area, and this is part of this program. We are already interacting with a number of countries that can share their expertise. Of course, the United States, by the way, Norway has huge experience in work with the military, having post-traumatic syndrome. Another category of victims are the children. Indeed, it's a very sensitive area. I can share with you one of our pilot projects, which we're implementing now in Spain. We gathered a group of children who indeed have serious psychological injuries. Children from Bucha, Kharkiv, Kramatorsk, from various regions of the country. They already have suffer evident consequences of those traumatic events they had to go through. Some of them stopped speaking, some of them stopped eating or sleeping. So we organized kind of a camp in Spain. We employ tutors and professional psychologists and psychotherapists. After 2 weeks of staying in that camp, we could already observe some positive results. At the same time, the psychologists here in Ukraine work with their parents and carers. We want to scale up this kind of projects. Unfortunately, there is very big number of children who will need this recovery. I hope we will handle that and we will not have this critical consequences widely spread of this suffering. I have a very difficult work of continuing asking questions. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I have another question for you. In fact, there's a question often asked to me, but I can hardly find decent words to respond. because I am overwhelmed with the emotion. You are a representative of Western world, Western intelligence. Maybe you can help me. I'm often asked about Ukraine fatigue, that the world is allegedly getting tired from Ukraine. What can be done about that? For me, it's a very painful question, and I'd like to address this question to you. I'm very concerned with this respect, but maybe since you are abroad, beyond the boundaries of Ukraine, you can give us a better vision of how this issue can be solved. Solving? No. I don't know, but I can answer this question. First, it seems to me, I understand why this question is so painful for you and for Ukrainians in general. But from my point of view, it's not, the situation is not that bad. You can still see a lot of Ukrainian banners all around our cities and towns, houses of the people who have absolutely different political preferences. American policy, again, is not that bad. I had a conversation with General Clark, General Ackerman, on the need to plan long-lasting war in order to win a short war. Germans have very important role to play, and they have kind of surprising debates. Still, there is some progress. I think these debates are moving towards better. But to answer your question, first, very pragmatic approach. It is necessary to win on the battlefield, like that happened yesterday, like it's happening today, like it's going to happen tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. The people, Americans, that's very cynical, say so, but that's the way the people are. And according to historic experience, the people would like to be on the side of those who are winning. And second, Ukrainian needs to be told about these victories in a very calm, political way as the common path towards better future for everybody. That's my advice. Thank you. I'm very thankful to you for this great work you're doing, preserving human values during the war. And I'm very thankful for this opportunity to have this conversation with you.